He was once the immortal icon of the small-screen rifleman Lucas McCain in the classic series The Rifleman, a model of strength, integrity, and courage beloved by millions of viewers. But offstage, Chuck Connor's real life was much more complex and contradictory than people might think. Deep secrets about him, aspects that had never been known. The silent inner struggles and tense relationships are now revealed, providing a more authentic glimpse into the man who became a legend. It is the contrast between the on-screen image and everyday life that makes Chuck Connor's story special, capturing the attention of not only fans, but also those who want to uncover the truth behind this shining star. He is a marksman, and now the secrets of Chuck Connors have come to light. Do you know anything else interesting about him? If so, leave a 1 below. If not, comment a 0. Don't forget to enjoy the video, hit like and subscribe to the channel to support us in bringing more captivating stories. Thank you very much. Before the world witnessed a cowboy with a rifle and a righteous gaze, before the name Lucas McCain echoed through living rooms across America, there was only Kevin Joseph Aloysius Connors, a tall, contemplative young man walking the weary streets of Brooklyn during one of the harshest periods in American history. Born on April 10, 1921. For his parents, Irish immigrants Alan and Marcella Connors, Chuck was born into a world that demanded everything but offered nothing in return. The Great Depression was not just an era, it was a daily reality that forced millions to live in silence, hunger, and despair. His father worked on the docks as a longshoreman, enduring the biting cold and grueling hours, while his mother took on odd, unstable jobs to make ends meet. The house was simple, the meals were meager, and the dreams had to be stronger than the circumstances. In a 1975 interview, Chuck quietly recalled, "We didn't have much, but we had each other, and somehow that was enough." That memory is not romantic at all. It is a window into a home where warmth was often lacking, where shoes were worn out, and where hope came in the form of a shared smile at dinner. When he was young, Chuck found his refuge not in comfort, but in movement. The cracked sidewalks of Bay Ridge became his dream field, and the dusty playgrounds of the local boys' club were his escape. He played baseball with the same intensity that others fought to survive, not for glory, but to feel alive. His eyes were always searching for an escape, a path forward. At just 14 years old, a glimmer of hope appeared. His raw, athletic talent, untrained yet undeniable, caught the attention of talent scouts. He was awarded a scholarship to the Adelphi Academy, a private school completely different from anything he had ever known. "I never felt like I belonged here," he later admitted. "But I knew I had to make it worthwhile." It is a painful paradox to be a poor boy in a bustling place, carrying the heavy burden of expectations and the fear of inadequacy. But Chuck carried them with quiet pride. In Adelphi, he excelled not just in one sport, but in many: baseball, basketball, football, track, and field. He never knew fatigue. Each swing of the bat, each drop of sweat was a step closer to escaping poverty.
I think the girls with their nails done now.
Yet even after rising up the darkness of his birthplace, never left him. "Sometimes I sit alone after practice," he recalled in a rare memory from 1981, "just thinking about how lucky I am and how afraid I am of losing that. That fear, that fire has always been with him. It burns behind his calm eyes and steady posture. It gave him an advantage that would later shape Lucas McCain, a man who understands pain, but never speaks of it.
Under the girls with their nails done now.
Looking back, the tragedy lies not only in how harsh life can be, but in how it silently inflicts pain. Chuck never exaggerated his beginnings, but anyone who listens closely can feel it. The pain of a childhood filled with longing. The brutal silence of dreams that are too big for the walls of a working-class apartment. Yet somehow he turned all those hardships into motivation. The boy from Brooklyn not only survived, but also thrived. Every sprint, every silent prayer, every late night with an empty stomach, all of it has built the foundation for a man who will one day stand tall in the legend of America. He did not come from privilege. He came from perseverance. And that made all the difference. When you grow up in poverty, even a small gift can feel like a miracle. For Chuck, that gift was sports. Running, catching, jumping, throwing sports were not just a joy. They were his escape. They were his voice in a world that rarely listens. When he entered Seton Hall University in the early 1940s, Chuck was not just surviving, he was thriving. Tall, agile, and full of enthusiasm, he played both basketball and baseball, earning the respect of his teammates and scouts. His nickname, Chuck, came from his signature phrase whenever he called for the ball, "Chuck it to me," a phrase that resonated with the eager energy that would one day shape who he was. But behind those smiles and achievements is a boy still running away from poverty, from fear, and from the thought that everything could vanish in an instant, and in many ways that has happened. In 1946, Chuck joined the Boston Celtics in their first season. Standing at 6 feet 5 inches, he was one of the tallest players on the court and made history as the first NBA player to shatter a backboard during a game. His physical strength was undeniable, but the fame did not follow. He only played 49 games, averaging 4.5 points per game. It was not a failure, but it was also not the future he had envisioned. Less than a year later, he left the Celtics not because he wanted to, but because he believed that baseball had a greater prospect. That belief soon broke his heart. On May 1st, 1949, Chuck Connors finally made his major league debut with the Brooklyn Dodgers. For a boy from Bay Ridge, wearing that uniform was a dream come true. But fate can be truly cruel. He played just one game, got hit with a double, and was sent back to the minors before he could catch his breath. That day haunted me for many years, he admitted. I thought it was over, that I had ruined everything. But Chuck didn't give up. He continued to play in the minor leagues with unwavering determination. Montreal Royals, Los Angeles Angels, wherever they sent him. In 1951, he got another chance, this time with the Chicago Cubs. He played 66 games, hit 2 home runs, and achieved an average of .239. While that may not be enough to become a star, it is an achievement that surpasses most of what people have ever accomplished. He didn't play just for the statistics. He played for dignity. Each swing of the bat was a battle against the voice inside, telling him he wasn't good enough. In the quiet corners of clubs and hotel rooms, Chuck began to feel that something was changing. Perhaps the dream he had pursued his whole life wouldn't last long. Perhaps the field is not where I can make my mark. I love basketball, he said in an interview in 1981. But I started to realize that maybe football no longer loves me. That realization did not come with bitterness. It came with insight and the courage to change. And it was in that unexpected space between shattered dreams and blind hope that Hollywood found him. He played for the Los Angeles Angels in the minor leagues in 1952. Chuck hit a powerful home run, catching the attention of a casting director in the stands.
Nails done.
He wasn't looking for an actor, but he saw something in Chuck's posture, demeanor, and face. A few days later, Chuck Connors, a former NBA player, a hopeful for MLB, a boy from Brooklyn, was standing in the MGM studio to audition. It wasn't the dream he had always wished for, but perhaps, just perhaps, it was exactly what he needed. Sometimes the biggest turning points in life begin with a bruise. In 1952, Chuck Connors was still pursuing what was left of his baseball dream, playing for the Los Angeles Angels in the minor leagues. The cheers gradually faded, the lights dimmed, and his body carried the silent exhaustion of a man who had given everything for an unreciprocated dream. But fate always has a strange way of waiting in the most unexpected places. That year, during a routine game, Chuck hit an incredibly powerful home run. It wasn't just the distance that was impressive, but also the way he moved, the way he commanded the field with a quiet, yet intense presence. Among the spectators was Billy Gordon, the casting director of MGM. Gordon was not a talented scout, but when he saw Chuck tall, muscular, and with an innate sense of expression, he leaned toward a colleague and said, "That's the Laurence Olivier of Diamond." That moment, born from a chance encounter and quiet allure, changed everything. After the game, Gordon approached Chuck right in the locker room and handed him a business card. "Have you ever thought about acting?" he asked. Chuck chuckled. He had never thought about it. His mind was still focused on the next throw, the next game. But then just a few days later, a minor injury forced him to sit out. The injury wasn't serious, but it was enough for him to consider a new direction. Out of curiosity, Chuck walked into MGM to audition. What happened next was incredible. The camera started rolling and a moment of brilliance occurred. He no longer plays baseball, but the focus and quiet intensity he honed over the years on the field were easily conveyed on screen. Within just 3 days, Chuck Connors signed his first Hollywood contract. For a man who had spent the past decade being told he wasn't good enough, this affirmation was truly overwhelming. It felt like I was finally being recognized. Later, he said in an interview in 1964, his first role was in Pat and Mike, a romantic comedy featuring Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. Chuck played a small part as a police captain, but it was more than just a debut, it was a doorway. On set, Spencer Tracy pulled him aside and said, "Just keep going, you have the talent." That one statement ignited a fire in Chuck that no stadium audience could provide. He threw himself into acting with the same intensity as in his sports days. In the following 5 years, he took on every role that came his way, whether big or small, whether as a supporting actor or a voice actor. His physique was imposing, but his acting began to show depth, quiet, tragic, noble. In 1957, he received a role that quietly changed the course of his career once again. In Disney's Old Yeller, Chuck plays the strict yet loving father, Burns Sanderson. The film is a family drama, but Connors delivered a strong performance filled with warmth. The producers of a new television project have been closely watching him. They are preparing a Western film about a widowed rancher raising his son in the Wild West. After seeing Chuck in Old Yeller, they knew they had found the right man. And so, without any grand display, the young man from Brooklyn who had once been overlooked by sports found a much more sustainable path for himself. He no longer needed to shine. He was about to etch his name into the history of American television. Many years later, when reflecting back, Chuck said, "Baseball taught me how to lose. Acting taught me how to stand firm." And in that simple statement, the truth about his journey came to life. Hollywood not only gave him a second chance, it also gave him a voice of purpose in life and a place where all the silent pain of the past could finally be heard, even if it was just through a cowboy with a rifle and a heart full of sorrow. In 1958, after many years of enduring sports injuries and whispers from Hollywood, Chuck Connors finally stood under the scorching sun of Arizona on the set of The Rifleman, ready to bring Lucas McCain to life. At that moment, he was not just an actor. He became the iconic father that millions of American families would consider their own. Strong, resilient, and rich in humanity. When the producers first offered him this role, Chuck almost declined. The salary was lower than for his previous roles, but MGM sweetened the deal with 5% of the film's profits, a carefully calculated gamble based on his authenticity. He accepted knowing that this could be his last chance to do something truly meaningful. What followed was a lifetime of hard work. He spent hours practicing with Rod Redwing, mastering horseback riding, and the improved art of spinning the Winchester rifle. His hands were blistered, his muscles ached. However, every drop of sweat and every pain was an investment in the truth. The truth about a man who has lost many things in life, but refuses to lose himself. Chuck once shared in a rare interview in 1965 that playing the role of Lucas McCain was a hidden blessing within the wounds, and you can feel that through his voice, a mix of pride and sacrifice. The show premiered on September 30th, 1958 in living rooms across America. It is not just a simple weekly Western show. It is an invitation into the soul of a father, a portrait of love wrapped in extraordinary resilience. Lucas McCain, a widowed rancher raising his son Mark alone in the harsh land of New Mexico, has become a symbol of dedication and moral wisdom. Letters keep pouring in, letters from single fathers saying that this character has given them the courage to raise their children. From the Vietnamese veterans seeking peace and justice in their homeland to the teenagers saddened by broken families due to poverty or loss, the character Lucas has become a source of spiritual support. A man in Idaho once shared, "Watching Lucas helped me stand firm when I had nothing left. Thank you, Mr. Connors, for showing me what true love is." On the very first night of its broadcast, over 14 million households tuned into the show. The program quickly climbed to fourth place in the rankings of the highest-rated television shows of the first season. However, for Chuck Connors, that success came with a deep sense of loneliness. He was no longer himself, but had become Lucas, with a flat cap, a sturdy rifle, and a strong moral compass. The public gradually could not distinguish between the man and the legend. In a letter to a friend in 1961, Chuck once revealed, "It's been a long time since I looked in the mirror and saw Chuck. I only see Lucas, and sometimes I wonder if there's anyone else in there." Behind the scenes, Chuck was not just an actor, but also a source of creative inspiration. He suggested revising the script so that the character Lucas speaks like a true rancher, and invited former co-star Duke Snider to make a guest appearance, adding authenticity to the film. Additionally, he guided young actors like Dennis Hopper, helping them find themselves. Although this dedication was clearly displayed on screen, it also quietly helped Chuck overcome real-life challenges. However, as time went on, directors only saw Lucas McCain. Any trace of a New York accent or strong demeanor in real life could shatter that illusion. Year after year, Chuck continuously rejected scripts outside the Western genre, not because he didn't want to, but because he was too tightly boxed in. By the end of 1963, after 168 episodes filled with many emotional moments between Lucas and his son, Chuck began his journey of self-discovery. A screen hero, yet in his career he faced a barrier that was hard to overcome. Nevertheless, he poured all his heart into the role. In a scene where he teaches his son, Mark, to confront his fears, he spent the entire afternoon rehearsing. The film crew will always remember the image of the silent tear rolling down during the moment the director called "cut." In that moment, Chuck was not just acting, he was truly a father. Fans still view that scene as the strongest symbol of fatherhood on television. The Rifleman not only set a new standard for family, but also changed the way television portrayed masculinity, allowing for the expression of gentleness, acceptance of pain, and vulnerability, along with using a gun not to instill fear but to protect oneself. Chuck Connors bears the responsibility of conveying that message every day. He takes pride in the role, but it also exhausts him. His physicality, discipline, and calm demeanor have become armor for Lucas, while also serving as a prison for himself. In a letter from 1964, he wrote, "I have poured all my strength into Lucas, and sometimes I feel empty at home. His life and mine have become entangled in an inextricable mess." Although his fame remained strong until the end of the season, the line between Chuck and Lucas became increasingly blurred to the point that Hollywood gradually failed to recognize the true person behind the legend. In the eyes of the audience, Chuck Connors is Lucas McCain, and that is more important than anything else. But it is this very paradox that reveals the portrait of the greatest role of his life. If you are curious about the real life of Chuck Connors, about the little-known facts, and want to explore the story behind the spotlight, don't forget to like, share this video, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other authentic and captivating stories. Let's explore and preserve memories not only of a screen legend, but also of the real person behind the role. He not only brought a television icon to America, but also gave them the image of a father who carries silent pain, enduring love, and strong moral principles. All of this is expressed through each turn of the Winchester under the sunset of the prairie. As the introduction of the final episode in 1963 appeared, there were no drums or trumpets, only the echo of gunfire and the heavy silence of millions of hearts, mourning something that had never been fully understood. A true father had to struggle for a long time to keep his true identity hidden within a legend. The relationship between Lucas McCain and his son Mark not only captivated audiences on screen, but also tells the touching story behind the scenes between Chuck Connors and young actor Johnny Crawford. It all began with a casting decision, which then blossomed into a friendship that lasted for decades, enduring challenges and ultimately leading to emotional farewells. Johnny once choked up and said at Chuck's funeral in 1992, "He was not just a co-star, but a real father to me." Those words, simple and unprepared, contained more depth than 1,000 scenes. From the early days in 1958 on set, Chuck had been guiding Johnny. Besides teaching him acting skills, he was also a mentor in life. Chuck often invited Johnny to go camping on weekends, sitting by the campfire to tell stories and talk about things beyond the limits of Hollywood. Johnny recalled, "He taught me how to fish, how to hold a horse still, but more importantly, he taught me how to be a man." Those moments weren't meant for the cameras. Perhaps that's why they became special and genuine. On set, Chuck always made sure Johnny didn't feel like he was beneath him. When the cameras paused, he took Johnny to watch baseball and introduced him to his former teammates. After losing his dream of a sports career, Chuck found solace in mentoring a young man who saw him as a father.
Girls with their nails done.
Over time, the emotions between them in the scenes grew deeper. Tender glances, protective hugs, gentle admonishments. This was not just acting, but a reflection of the genuine relationship developing behind the scenes. Many crew members noticed that Chuck was much gentler when he was with Johnny. It was like witnessing a real encounter between a father and son shared a cameraman. Indeed, this was true in many ways. However, that bond was revealed most profoundly many years after the film ended. At Chuck's funeral in 1992, Johnny stood before everyone choked up and unable to speak. Chuck was not just Lucas McCain, he was the man who made me feel safe when I was scared, who was there for me when I lost my first pet, and who cheered for me louder than anyone when I graduated high school. I lost not just a friend, but a father. This is not an advertisement or a movie. This is pure, painful, and irreplaceable love. In a world where relationships often fade quickly, their bond remains strong. It is not based on reputation or contracts, but built from shared meals, gentle advice, and unspoken understanding. Chuck Connors may be the most beloved on-screen father in America, but for Johnny, he lives that role fully every day. This part of Chuck's life, though quiet, adds depth to his legacy that no award or thank you letter can match. In a career full of ups and downs, the relationship with Johnny is one of the truest and most enduring achievements. For those who have watched The Rifleman late at night, the connection between reality and fiction is what keeps the story alive in people's hearts. But as the applause for The Rifleman fades and the cameras stop rolling, another battle begins. There is no script, but it is very real. For Chuck Connors, the success that brought him into the living rooms of millions of Americans every night became a cage. After 168 episodes, Chuck was no longer known as an actor, but as Lucas McCain. And that became the biggest problem. Being typecast in a stereotypical role in Hollywood, which sounds prestigious, feels like a life sentence. Chuck finds himself limited to cowboy roles heroes with many different versions of the same image that he has completely embodied. After The Rifleman ended, he turned down 8 Western film projects in the following 2 years. "I don't want to spend the rest of my life in the saddle," he once revealed. However, escaping that image was not easy. He truly tried. In branded 1965-66, he played a disgraced cavalry officer trying to redeem his reputation. This role had depth and darkness completely different from the upright and steadfast image of Lucas McCain. Later in the film, Roots 1977, Chuck took on the role of a brutal slave owner, perhaps the most shocking role of his career. This cold, steadfast performance earned him a prestigious Emmy nomination. However, for many viewers, separating the man they once admired from this character remains difficult. The shadow of McCain still haunts. Even when venturing into the science fiction genre, as in Soylent Green alongside Charlton Heston, Chuck could not completely escape the casting director's bias of being too Western, too McCain. He himself began to doubt the impact of this famous role. In a 1979 interview, he admitted, "Sometimes I wonder if Lucas is a blessing or a curse. He gave me everything, but he also took away too much. It is a cruel paradox to be deeply loved for a role to the extent that it overshadows every other aspect of one's career." For Chuck Connors, the burden of being America's most beloved television father was not only an honor, but also a weight to bear.
I think the girls with their nails done.
He carries it with pride, but also with a lingering pain that never fades. Behind the glitz of Hollywood and the resilient, upright image of Lucas McCain Chuck Connors is a man with a private life much more chaotic than the character on screen. He is not just a television hero, but also a man who has experienced heartbreak from 3 failed marriages. Each marriage reveals an image that he meticulously crafted for the public. Although on screen, he is the ideal father figure of America. In real life, he is often associated with turmoil, stress, and controversy. Perhaps the saddest part is the contrast, and the long time it took for the public to recognize the truth. His first marriage to Elizabeth Riddell began in 1948, when he was still playing low-level baseball in Canada. They had 4 sons and were once a symbol of the post-war American family. Photos from that time capture them smiling brightly during picnics, watching baseball, and posing for Christmas cards. However, behind the closed door, Chuck's infidelity began to destroy what seemed to be a perfect life. Hollywood buzzed about his flirtations with co-stars, late nights out, and the secret calls that Elizabeth pretended not to notice. She once told a friend in the early 1960s, "I married the character he plays, not the real man." By 1962, the marriage crumbled under the weight of betrayal. Just a year later, Chuck remarried Carmela Devi, an Indian actress he met on the set of Geronimo. This marriage shocked Hollywood as it was an interracial union during a time of heightened racial tensions in the U.S. Initially, Chuck attracted significant attention. However, the press did not mention the silent arguments, emotional distance, and rumors of conflict. Colleagues described this relationship as very erratic at times, romantic and devoted, while at other times cold or harsh. Carmela's friends shared that she often felt like a tool in Chuck's public narrative, rather than a true partner. After his divorce in 1972, Chuck remained single until 1977, when he married Faith Quabius, a former Playboy model who was over 30 years younger than him. The couple sparked much controversy even in an industry as permissive as Hollywood. They had a whirlwind marriage and lived extravagantly. However, those close to Chuck noticed something was amiss. The disregard for boundaries, the outbursts of anger, and the increasingly evident feeling that the reputation he once controlled was now controlling him. The marriage fell apart in less than 3 years. Rumors circulated about psychological manipulation, mood swings, and whispered threats. Chuck, once a symbol of calm strength among the Riflemen, seemed increasingly haunted in real life. These broken marriages painted a thought-provoking picture. While Lucas McCain embodied loyalty, honor, and emotional stability, Chuck Connors was often impulsive, distant, and prone to destructive behavior. One of his sons later remarked in an interview, "People see him as a wonderful father, but we know he was more focused on pursuing roles than on birthdays, more likely to kiss fans than to hug us." The hurt ran deep. Chuck's relationship with his children became strained. He missed graduations, birthdays, and even hospital stays. One son is said to have not spoken to him for many years. The warmth he displayed on set the comforting embrace around Johnny Crawford's shoulders, the smile of a father rarely seen in private. Instead, his family saw a man obsessed with his own legend, trapped by expectations, and unable or unwilling to open up to vulnerability. Friends also noticed this contrast. On set, Chuck could light up the entire room, but when alone, he seemed overshadowed, preoccupied, and reserved. A director recalls that he is two people. the man who makes America cry every Thursday night, and the man who cries alone in the trailer when the cameras stop rolling. Some of his female co-stars have begun to feel exhausted. Many have refused to work with him again, citing behaviors ranging from inappropriate flirting to blatant emotional manipulation. Although nothing was made public during his lifetime, the private consensus was clear. Chuck Connors is complex, captivating, but emotionally dangerous. However, very few people speak out. The allure, fame, and overwhelming presence of Lucas McCain have cast a long, protective shadow. It wasn't until after his death in 1992, when the memorials began to fade and old friends spoke more openly, that a new picture emerged. The icon revered by America lived a life full of contradictions. His greatest role became his greatest burden, both for himself and for his loved ones. Those who live beyond the reach of the camera lens are often left behind in the shadows. Chuck Connors' story compels us to look deeper into the nature of fame, family, and identity. It raises a difficult question: can a man be both a hero and a heartbreaker, both an icon and an absentee? And if so, who will we remember, the man on screen or the man behind it? Ultimately, perhaps the greatest tragedy is not the broken marriages or shattered families. It is precisely these qualities that have made him unforgettable to millions. His strength, resilience, and charisma also built emotional walls that separated him from his closest loved ones. Chuck Connors was not just a television character. He was a man full of contradictions, suffering, and complexity. And like many other great performances, the true story of his life was not fully understood until long after the final curtain fell. Chuck Connors may have captivated audiences with his strong charm and the wisdom of a father figure on screen, but behind the scenes, a completely different story was unfolding. A story that is much more controversial, complex, and painful on a human level. In the role of Lucas McCain, he portrayed the image of a man that every son admired and every daughter trusted. However, many who worked with him, especially women, would later recount a less glamorous and more troubling reality. In the Hollywood elite of the 1960s and 1970s, whispers about Chuck's behavior grew louder. Many female co-stars reportedly refused to take on further projects with him, citing his excessive flirting, boundary-crossing conversations, and persistent advances. On the surface, these interactions could be seen as harmless charm, but behind closed doors, the discomfort was evident.
I think the girls with their nails done now.
As an unnamed actress confided, he plays a gentleman on screen, but he doesn't always know where his role will end. Others on set expressed similar discomfort. Crew members recalled times when Chuck shifted from being cheerful and engaging to cold or controlling, depending on the attention he received. His tall presence, once the warm image of a strong father, could become a threatening tool when things didn't go his way. Although no official charges were ever made public during his lifetime, the number of times he quietly declined to work with him again spoke volumes. Meanwhile, the cracks in his personal life grew deeper. Some of his children, particularly those from his first marriage to Elizabeth Riddell, have expressed a profound sense of abandonment over the years. In a rare interview, one of his sons said, "People ask me what it was like growing up with Lucas McCain as a father. I told them that I am not like that. I grew up watching him on TV like everyone else, but in real life, he was never there." This contradiction is heartbreaking. Millions of people see Connors as the ultimate protector, the man who would stop at nothing to defend his son Mark in The Rifleman. Yet his own biological children often had to go through their formative years without him. Birthdays passed without a call. Major life events came and went without anyone knowing.
I think the girls with their nails done now.
Even when present, Chuck is described as distracted, preoccupied with Script's fame or his next achievements. This emotional distance seeps into his relationships with friends and colleagues. Some find him generous and charming, while others believe he is moody and irritable. A recurring theme in these stories is unpredictability. Moments of warmth followed by sudden withdrawal. Compliments followed by cold criticism. A fellow actor remarked, "Chuck has a talent for making you feel like you're the only person in the room until you realize he isn't really listening." As the months passed and his career gradually faded, his behaviors became more pronounced, his interactions with younger women increasingly scrutinized, and stories of his impulsive outbursts spread more widely. Many began to see him as a man still living in the shell of Lucas McCain, unwilling to let anyone see his true self, even as that character became harder to maintain. Looking back, Chuck Connor's life behind the camera is a portrait full of contradictions. A man revered for his moral compass on television, yet often straying from those principles in real life. His story compels us to consider the cost of idolizing public figures without questioning the silent sacrifices that contribute to that. What will happen when the hero we admire only appears during commercial breaks? And what price do those closest to him have to pay for that illusion? The tragedy of Chuck Connors lies not only in the fractured relationships or the whispers that followed him throughout the filming process. It lies in the gap between the man admired by the whole world and the man who, according to many, never truly appeared for those who needed him the most. He is a star who has illuminated countless homes on screen, but within his own household, there exist deep hidden corners. Perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect of his legacy is not the imperfections, but the way he made us realize that even the brightest legends carry darkness within. In the final years of his life, the boundary between his true self and the character he embodied became blurred, with genuine emotions and vulnerabilities more evident than ever. In 1991, nearly 30 years after The Rifleman ended, Connors returned as Lucas McCain, an irreplaceable icon, in the television movie The Gambler Returns: The Luck of the Draw. Those present during the filming still vividly remember the moment he broke down in tears while choosing the hat for the character, a moment that said it all. This was not just a role. Lucas McCain was a part of his soul, a deep corner of his heart that he had never truly left or wanted to let go of. This is the legacy, the shadow that has followed him throughout his life, and also the final support in his soul. However, behind this return lies a harsh reality. Years of smoking have taken a toll on his health. In early 1992, he was diagnosed with lung cancer, and shortly after he was hospitalized due to pneumonia. Just a few months after returning to his beloved role, Chuck Connors passed away on November 10, 1992, at the age of 71. The illness that brought him down also took away one of the most enduring and memorable voices in television. At the funeral, Johnny Crawford, who played his son on screen and was also a close friend in real life, choked up while reading the eulogy. Johnny emotionally stated that Connors was not only a co-star, but also a wonderful man, a friend, and a father figure in his life. Those words echoed the sentiments of millions of viewers who grew up with the image of the Rifleman Lucas McCain, a symbol of strength and morality amidst the changing tides of life. Although not perfect, the influence and legacy of Chuck Connors are undeniable. In 1984, he was honored on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, a prestigious recognition of his tireless contributions to the entertainment industry. However, his truest legacy lies in the hearts of his fans, not on the honor boards. Across generations, he became the ideal father figure, a moral icon, and a resilient man who dared to stand up against injustice. The image of Lucas McCain walking alongside his son Mark on the arid trails of New Mexico is not just a story from a film, but has become a vivid memory and legend in the hearts of viewers. To this day, The Rifleman remains one of the most beloved classic works, especially for the older generation of audiences in America, those who still remember the feeling of gathering with family each week to watch the story of courage, discipline, and love. Chuck Connors. The man behind the image of the sturdy rifleman on screen is no longer just a mere icon. The secrets, the hidden corners, and the contradictions in his life have come to light, allowing us to see a real person filled with emotions, pain, and unfulfilled dreams. He was not just a star, but also a father, a friend, and a symbol intertwined with complex stories of fame and family. The life of Chuck Connors is a testament that behind the spotlight, there are always untold stories, and sometimes the heroes on screen carry very ordinary burdens. Through these stories, we not only gain a deeper understanding of the man himself, but also feel the depth of life beyond the stage lights. Thank you for taking the time to join us in exploring the true portrait of a legend. If you find this video meaningful, don't forget to like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the exciting content coming up. Please leave a comment below to share your thoughts or memories about Chuck Connors. Every story, every perspective contributes to the multifaceted picture of his life and legacy.